And so we can come to this unfolding hold to the spiritual path because there are things that we want to get away from. We want to get away from these things about us that we find unpalatable, unlovable. We want to find something that is more acceptable, more lovable, more something, more something, anything that we imagine like a better version of ourselves as the awakened one, the enlightened one, the free one. Whereas in truth, this freedom is always here. It's always here underneath all of these masks and roles, concepts and beliefs, all of these ideas that we have about who we are that we can find unacceptable. The true one, the true being that we are is always here, never disturbed, never affected in any way. And so it is really through meeting all of these obscurations, all of these places that we have wanted to reject, that we can illuminate everything that we don't want to be, everything that we don't like, everything that we want to hide. We discover that underneath all of this, there is a truth, a simplicity, a clarity that is free of all of this. And at the same time, it includes all of it. And so we come to this resting, this simple resting in the being, the stillness, the silence, the openness of simply being here, now, the presence, the silent presence that is not moving and changing. And we find in this simple silent presence like a refuge or a sanctuary, a peace, an openness, a naturalness that feels whole. And it is whole. It is peace. It is freedom. It is natural openness. And we can imagine with the mind that how can we stay here and keep away from all of that stuff that keeps getting in the way and disturbing. But in truth, the way that we actually come to stay here is by not trying to stay here, but by being here as the light of awareness that illuminates everything that seems to be in the way, seems to be distracting, seems to be obscuring. We rest here as the light and we illuminate it all in the recognition that what we are in truth, what is the true essential nature, is being the aware being the light that illuminates everything that is moving and changing, witnesses, is aware of, and recognizes deep within the innermost in of the being that what I am is not touched, not moved or changed or disturbed by the ever-changing landscape. That there's this rooted knowing of being the being that has never ever left. We have never left it. It has never left us. It has always been the same. And we never, ever lose sight of this. Even if we are habituated to be operating in the mind and the me, because we have learned this way, this protection, this way of defending, this way of conditioning. But in truth, the knowing that knows has never not known this, has never in truth forgotten this. It is the reason that we are seeking for this wholeness, is because there is a part of us that has never forgotten, could not forget, could not leave itself. It is the truth of who we are that has never, ever left itself. And that is why underneath the stories of deficiency, lack, unworthiness, unlovableness, something missing, there is this wholeness that is already ever present. There can be so many ways of speaking about this truth. And essentially it's all the same, but there can be different nuances and flavors. And the mind will attach on to the ones that it likes the most, right? And depending on the laws of nature, it will follow and be pulled by the way that feels resonant, or the way that feels like, yeah, that I like the sound of that, right? But the truth is, the words don't matter. We're speaking about freedom from the mind. We're speaking about freedom from the patterns, protections, defenses, essentially the egocentric patterning. We're speaking about being the stillness, being the silence, being the ever-present grace of being, the ever-present openness, simplicity, being the love that is without condition, being the immaculate glory, the radiant heart, letting go of hanging on to the story, letting go of the obscurations. It does not matter how we speak of it. We cannot do a thing. It does not matter what the mind likes the sound of and what it doesn't like the sound of. We cannot do a thing. We are opening to a perspective of seeing that is so profound that it has nothing to do with the me and the mind and the experience of the me. It is the utter freedom from being bound by the story, held in the protections and defenses. It is utter freedom from the mind and the egocentric patterning. And the way that we come to remember this freedom that we already are is by opening in the presence of our own simple, open, natural presence, and remembering the felt sense of being, the wholeness, the freedom, the openness, touching, tasting this truth, and remembering in the moment, remembering this, yes, this, but not trying to grab onto it with the mind, not trying to not trying to effort to maintain this, because it is impossible. It is only by recognizing, remembering the simple, silent truth of who you are, the being that you are, the aware being that you are, and then resting here and being simply aware as the principle of illumination of everything that is moving and changing, every thought, everything that you like and you don't like, all the resistances, the conditionings, the reactions, the tendencies, the deficiency stories, all of it, just being aware of all of it, but not actually doing a thing. Don't try to fix it. Don't enter the conversation. Just be here as the stillness and watch. And in the watching, there is a deepening recognition in the felt sense of being that you are the being, you are the stillness, you are the silence, the openness. Start to remember the true nature, the essential, natural being that you are in truth. And this being is one being that we all share. And we all share this being with the divine, with God, with Ma, with the innocence, the purity, the divinity that is. We share this natural beingness. We do not need to understand anything because there is a wisdom, an intelligence that is moving within itself to free itself. This is why there is no doing. There's no action that we can take. It's just about being here. It's about allowing naturally for life just to live itself. Life is a projection of the mind. Well, the sense of my life is. Life itself is utterly free. Life itself is in perfect balance and is just dancing, harmonizing itself and reveling in itself. Life knows itself. You are life. And in a way, this unfolding is to remember that you are life. You are life itself, the vitality, the life in life, not the story in life. You are the life, the freedom, the eternal in life. You are the aliveness in life. You are not the story of my life. But we cannot come to the knowing of this by trying to learn or understand. We can only come to the knowing of this by being the being that knows itself, and in the knowing, flowing as life, feeling yourself as the flow of life, feeling that you are the aliveness that is animating everything. You are the aliveness of life. And here is the aliveness of life. There is this flow and this openness and this flow of allowing and this ability to watch the play of life, allowing, receiving, and recognizing that in truth you are not touched or disturbed by any of it. That you are the life, the aliveness, the flow, and that you're not the story. But we can only come to remember this through being that which knows, right? So as we unfold our petals and flower in the remembering, in the radiance of what we are in truth, our flowering depends upon having a rooted knowing of the being, and then the flowering is the allowing of everything, all of life, staying open and receptive in the face of all of life, not closing, resisting, and dividing from anything, but using the grace of life to be the fertile ground for freedom to be tasted, for everything to know itself. Just to be here right now, just as you are. There's nothing to get, nothing to try for, There's no right or wrong. There's just simply being here. It is such a depthful relaxation to just be here. And it also requires an honesty, a willingness, an honest willingness to just be here just as you are. To just be here as you are, to be the openness of the moment that includes everything, so that you are not dividing the moment. You're not trying to get away from anything. And you're also not trying to analyze or evaluate this moment according to the me. You're not dissecting it. You're not fragmenting it. You are the wide open spaciousness of the moment that includes everything. And when there is just this openness that includes everything, there is no effort to find the being. You just recognize that in the depthful relaxation that you are the being. You just are the presence, the space, the openness. Because the resistance, the protection just naturally collapses away. The holding patterns, the trying to be me, the trying anything, just rests, just relaxes. And here you are, just as yourself, just as you've always been, simple and free. Not free as someone, but free as freedom. Here in the silence, here in the stillness, we could say that the words here are speaking to the one heart, the consciousness speaking to itself, your heart speaking to itself. A simple openness. That these words are not for the mind, they're not instructions. Consciousness speaking to itself, consciously speaking to itself, bringing forward the remembering. This is who you are. You are not the person. There is nothing here for the person. There is nothing here for the mind. But this unraveling is about coming to recognize the simple silence of being. Resting here, just being here. Nothing to do, nothing to change, nothing to understand. Nothing can be in the way. If anything seems to be in the way, just to be aware of it. Is it really disturbing you? In truth, is the aware being that you are disturbed by anything at all? Is the peace and stillness of being disturbed by anything that is moving and changing? Is the sense of this presence touched or disturbed in any way? And it is in this confirmation that recognizes within the innermost being, no, this peace, this being is always the same. Resting, coming to this deep and simple rest. Still, silent, natural being. And hear the honesty, hear the openness. It's so natural. Hear the light of awareness that illuminates. illuminates anything and everything that is moving and changing. And in that illuminates where there is resistance and protection and defense. Can feel in the nervous system when there is something that is an old stress pattern surfacing and trying to release. It is part of the grace. And this is so important, is that we can be so focused on being the being that we don't want anything to arise. But life living itself will bring forward the old stress. It will bring forward situations created out of the projections in the mind, out of the consciousness itself, in order to reflect itself to itself, in order that you can see what you could not otherwise see if it was not being reflected. And when these reflections come in the play of life, they can feel like challenging situations. They can feel like situations that we don't want to be happening. And we can imagine that something is amiss in our spiritual journey if these tricky situations are arising. But any trickery, any challenge, any intensity is somehow a reflection of a part of you, consciousness, a pattern that is just surfacing to be seen in the light, received, and surrendered through, we could say, welcomed, fully welcomed, so that nothing is left out of this wholeness and nothing is left out of this honesty. If we are longing for truth, for freedom, there cannot be any hiding places. How can wholeness be whole if we are not willing to face every single fiber of what we are and bring it into the light? If we're not willing to reveal all of the places that we have stuffed down and we try to pretend are not there, how can we be real if we're not willing to be real, right? What are we here for if we're not willing to be real, to be honest, to stop hiding? And so much a part of this unfolding is about the way that life offers us these reflections and these opportunities to just keep facing these hidden places and to not turn away, to meet yourself in such a direct gaze of honesty in the face of anything and everything that arises. Meet each other, meet your companions, your loves, your co-workers, your friends, in such a deep, honest, open gaze, a willingness to meet whatever is here, in readiness, in ripeness. This is what starts to happen because it just is too uncomfortable to hide and pretend anymore. That freedom is about a freedom from the mind. And the mind is the defense and the protections that keep us hiding. It's a freedom from the secrets. It's a freedom from the skeletons in the closet, right? It's a freedom from anything that you're afraid of people finding out about you, right? But what are we doing here? What are we up to if we are longing for freedom and truth, but we are still hiding? The greatest part of this journey into yourself is to stop hiding from yourself. Being the being is a big part of it, recognizing yourself as the transcendent. But to stop hiding from yourself, to stop denying any part of yourself, and to truly allow life to shine the light of awareness upon everything that can create separation division, hiding places. It is the greatest part of this unfolding, and it is the most important, and it is also the part that can often be overlooked because it's very intense to meet yourself in this way. But if you are here, you are already aligned, mature and ready for this. You have already said yes to this within your functioning. That this life is for this exact purpose. However hard it may feel, however intense, and however much the mind might bring forward ideas that you're not getting it, that somehow it's not coming together the way that you might have imagined, that you would like your awakening to be, right? But this is an incredibly depthful unfolding that has to challenge everything. But it's in no way a mental or experiential unfolding. It's not a psychological unfolding. It's happening within the consciousness itself. And yet within the consciousness itself, there is this incredibly graced opportunity to meet all of the patternings and holdings in consciousness and allow everything to unravel and refine, transmute into the purity. So we come to the being, and the being is like the refuge, the sanctuary, the true knowing of who you are. And once we are resting in the being, we have this incredible ability to be aware and to have resolve no matter what arises. To be here so that all of the parts of yourself that have been pushed away can surface. That there's nothing in the life that is out of place. Everything that is happening is part of the divine play, and it's being orchestrated so that consciousness can meet itself and know itself in the light of truth. There's nothing personal about it, and that is why there's no one that can do anything to change or affect this unfolding. It is a natural intelligence that is flowing life within itself, and it is unlimited and impersonal completely. So when we come to the being, the felt sense, the remembrance of being, the wide open spaciousness of being, the naturalness, the awake awareness, the awake field that knows itself, that you are the transcendent field, and it is utterly impersonal, silent, still, simple, immaculate. It is innocence. It is wholeness. And in the presence of being, there can be the natural recognition of this. You can confirm it in your direct experience, yes. The natural being, the peace, the openness, just being here. You are undisturbed by anything. You are the stillness, the silence. You have never been someone, and there is not anything that one can do. You can just be here as the natural being, and in its own perfect presence, this being opens to remember itself, and the remembrance happens now, in the immediacy and intimacy of simple presence, the timeless, eternal now. This is where you are, the timeless, eternal in life. You are life unbounded. You are life that is ever present. And the knowing is in your own presence of being here now. Simple, silent being, just being here now. Wide open heart. It is a familiar knowing that is here, because you have never left yourself. You have always been this being. So to remember is to come to a recognition that you have always known this. This has always been here. You have never left yourself. You have always been this truth. And the play of life that has played out on the surface, and how you have been accustomed to identifying with the mind and the life and the story and overlooking this simple presence. Suddenly it all comes clear. Oh, I've always been this. I've always been myself. I'm never not myself, not in truth. I am not the story. I am not the roles that I play. I'm not the things that have happened to the character in the life. I'm not even the laws of nature. I'm not any of that. What I am is this wide open, eternal presence of being. And this remembering is such a sweet freedom, such a sweet remembering of the wholeness, being the being that just is. There's a sense of completeness here, perfection, wholeness. The curious thing is that as we taste this wholeness, it feels like nothing else could be wanted, nothing else could ever happen, that this is it, this is it, this is who I am, this is what I am, this is the wholeness, this is myself, this is the natural self, and I have always been this natural self. And there is an aliveness, and the aliveness is the knowing in the being that knows itself. It's alive and awake to itself. And this aliveness is the flow. And we want the flow to flow. We don't want to try to stop the flow flowing so that we can feel a depth of peaceful silence. We want the peaceful silence to be recognized, to be dynamically flowing within itself, in the knowing of itself. And that the dynamic flow does not disturb the peaceful silence. The peaceful silence of being is still here. And yet the dynamic flow can feel so alive. It can feel like it's more dominant. But it's okay, because in a way it's like two sides of the very same. And we come to recognize that it's all one. The deep silent being and the dynamic flowing being is all one. There's no separation, there's no division. And you do not lose the peace and the silence when you open to the flow. And yet when the flow is flowing, it can feel so alive. And it's different to when we open to the deep peace. But peace is still here. It is to notice, even in the aliveness and flow, peace is still here. Peace has not gone anywhere, and nor has the felt sense of yourself. You are here. Deep, silent stillness, freedom, unbounded freedom. And you are also the moving flow, the alive flow, right? This is how we open in the flow and the aliveness of the knowing. We open to the flow of intelligence, and the intelligence knows that life is the flow, that you are the flow of life. You are life itself. And the remembering happens in the flow of consciousness itself. It doesn't happen, of course, in the mind or any kind of faculty of understanding. It happens in the intelligence opening to its own flow, which is like a resonance, a frequency in the knowing of itself and remembering itself. And so it is known in the unseen. It's deeper, finer, subtler than the mind. It does not matter here what the mind is up to, because the recognition here is that you are not the mind, you are not the story, and nor can any of the mind or story roles, protections, defenses have any impact on this true one that you are. And as we come to recognize this true one, and there's a resting, deep, natural resting, the recognition is that you are the transcendent field. But the transcendent field isn't getting away from anything. Being the transcendent field is recognizing that you're untouched. You are the transcendent. You're that which is untouched, home free, and never ever touched by anything. This is the sanctuary of being yourself. This is being the being, that you are the transcendent field. Once there is an opening to this perspective and knowing, it never ever closes or goes anywhere. It cannot ever be veiled again. And yet the play of life might seem like it veils, and the veiling is part of the divine play that brings in a sense of concealment. It's the Maya, it's the stickiness, right? That plays out as concealment. But in truth, it is grace. It is the play of life, the divine life, and it is playing to create a reflection of consciousness to itself in order for consciousness to see itself, to see its patterns, and to be able to be the stillness in the face of the patterns arising, so that the patterns can receive the reflection of stillness and still. And when the patterns still in the presence of stillness, the remembering of being the light is the result. It's natural. There's nothing to do. When you are just here as the stillness, still, silent, aware as the being, watching the patterns that are dancing, just watching and feeling the sensation in the nervous system, allowing old stresses to arise, allowing everything that is patterned, that has been hidden and tucked away, to come forward. Because in truth, it feels personal. It feels like me, my story, my suppressed, my repressed, my conditioning, my protections. But none of this is really personal. What it all is in the mechanistic functioning of consciousness is an impersonal flow of consciousness that is just tangled in patterns. And the patterns play out as memory, past, conditioning, protections, beliefs, concepts, ideas, all of this kind of ways that we divide, right? So we don't have to understand anything. This is a great misconception of the mind, that we have to understand. And we try to make a job, work, a project out of this for the mind, for the me. How to free myself, how to process all of this. But it's not about that. It's about being here. And when you can truly be here for yourself, you will set up the most profound situation where refinement can happen naturally, that you can be the presence of divine love, of wholeness for everything that is residual in the nervous system, in the consciousness that is patterned, to naturally surface itself. It will come forward, it will reveal its narrative, and in that it will be seen, acknowledged, And it will, in that acknowledgement, there will be this bridge that is created where everything that is hidden will just step across this bridge of light into the remembering of true nature. The patterns of consciousness untangle in the light and warmth of the innocent purity, divinity of true openness. So we will never understand this with the mind. We can say it a gazillion times and the mind will never get it. It can try to conceptualize it and it will come up with lots of ways of attempting. But until it is known in direct experience, it will not set up the perfect conditions, let's say, for refinement to happen. The perfect conditions are not conditioned as in holding conditionings, but the perfect, open, wide, awake, aware environment, the golden landscape of consciousness where true refinement can happen. Now we could say on a certain surface layer that the nervous system, the me, the young one, the one that feels to be deficient, lacking, wounded, unlovable, abandoned, rejected, stressed, anxious, sad, afraid, all of these kind of things, that one will never let go into anything less than perfect safety, will not let go into anything less than perfect love. So as we open to the being, we're opening to the remembrance of being that perfect love, the perfect presence. Everything that was lacking in the young life is discovered to be the true nature. And as we open to be this, we have this incredibly powerful capacity to allow everything to surface and transmute into the light, to hold ourselves in this incredible grace, light, presence, love, innocence, compassion, so that everything that has been tucked away can find its way out of the darkness, out of the hidden. All of the secrets can come forward. You can tell your secrets to yourself. It's like the child telling all of the secrets, all of the fears, anxieties, stresses to the glorious illumination of the perfect parent, right? The perfect parent is God, is the glory. And when we know our oneness, our absolute oneness, it's as if we then are the perfect parent for this sense of wounded child within us, right? So this is one, like a sort of surface perspective of languaging it. Deeper than this, in the subtle realms of consciousness, what is really happening is that conditioned patterns of consciousness are quite simply, impersonally, being called by the big light out of their patterning. The big light, the holding of the big light, is shining a reflection of love, of light, of true nature, so that these holding places, these hiding places, these secret places, these dark places, come to recognize underneath their story, beliefs, concepts, protections, can feel the innocence of the essence nature as light. This is the place that has never forgotten. And as this light shines, the sense of being the being, these places start to open and tell the secrets, bring forward the hiding places, the fears, the stresses, the anxieties, all of it. All of it comes forward, but it comes forward naturally when there's a readiness. When these places, we could say, feel safe. What that feels like in consciousness is that There's just a simple recognition within consciousness that its tangled pattern is just a tangled pattern, and that its true essence nature is one with this light. And so it lets go into this light. So this is what is always happening. And this is the incredible wisdom, grace of this unfolding. And the grace of this is that it refines and refines and gets subtler and subtler. These holding places can only be transmuted in the presence of divine love, of wholeness, of perfect love. They can only be transmuted all the way, fully, out of the holding patterns in the presence of divine love. So our work is just to be the presence of divine love, to be the being, to be the light, the love, the openness, that which everything can come towards and receive the reflection, right? So this is why we need honesty. Honesty has to be a part of it. Have to have this willingness to gaze into everything, knowing the essence light at the core, because we know that one essence light is all there is. And if something arises that feels like it doesn't belong, that we can hold it in the light until it remembers that it belongs. And the honesty is about the willingness to let whatever comes forward come forward, to be honest with ourselves, to allow the feelings that come up and the stories that the mind wants to bring forward to be spoken as a narrative, not as a story that is engaged with in the pain body and embellished and used as a distraction, but that these places can just speak. They can just speak the truth of what is going on. And they can be acknowledged so that they can cross the bridge, open, right? These places have to be acknowledged. They have to be illuminated. And then in that illumination, in that acknowledgement, they recognize the presence of love, right? They're recognized that they're truly welcomed in the presence of perfect love. Like that depth of welcoming can only happen when the glory of God is here, when the light of God is here. And so these places come into the light. Everything comes into the light to be remembered as light in essence nature. The honesty is the willingness to not push anything away. The honesty to allow these voices that are hidden away inside to say what they want to say and not push them away, not make them wrong, not try to defend, protect, or change. So this is where we speak of stop the conversation with these places and just listen. Just listen to all of these places. Just let the expression come forward, because as the expression comes, it starts to free the tension and holding in the body. And you start to find parts of yourself that you have pushed down. You start to find more wholeness and freedom in all of your functioning by truly allowing all of the parts of you to come forward. So much that gets spoken about this unfolding is about the transcendent, like a focus upon the transcendent, a focus upon being the being, a focus upon resting as the being. And of course, there is a part of this unfolding that's it's so necessary to come to this depth and for the consciousness to shift enough that the recognition of the being is deep and rooted enough, because otherwise this kind of work will get mixed up. It will get confused, and it will be happening in psychological realms, and it will create like intensity that can't be fully transmuted. So we have to really have a deep sense of the being, and being able to come to this deep sense of the being for there to be a true transmutation, a true safety, right? There's a grace in this process as well, that we also have to be held in this for a certain amount of time, right? We can't actually fully facilitate ourselves in this until there is the ability to rest and allow. So it's all about the intelligence that knows how this works. It's not a mental process, right? So the deeper that we are resting in the being, the deeper there is a rooting in the being, and that we're not impulsively going to the mind and reaction, that we can allow these voices to come forward. But it's to remember they will only come forward when they feel truly safe. So they won't come forward if there's a big party judge sitting before them. They won't come forward. They just won't. They might try, but as soon as they're judged, they just shut down again, right? So this is why, to start with, we can be held in these places where they can feel a certain safety. But there is a wisdom in it all, and there's nothing in time or measure that is true in any of this. There has to be a complete naturalness in it all, right? So the speaking of it isn't speaking of it as a process that needs to be understood. It's about a natural unfolding, and it's about recognizing what is happening, right? So when the speaking comes, it's about being able to recognize, because when there's a recognition of things that might be happening, it brings a certain relaxation. Oh, the intelligence hears itself, the intelligence of the consciousness hears itself, and it steps, let's say, into the flow of remembering, the flow of attraction, the flow of life, of openness, a flow of allowing, a flow of natural acceptance, right? And where there's a flow of openness, allowing, attraction, natural acceptance, everything is moving, right? It's not stuck and blocked and frozen, right? So we can say again and again, it's all about being the being, resting as the being. But being the being isn't about transcending away. It's about being the knowing that is rooted in itself, that can then allow all of the natural flow of life and see that it is a natural flow of grace, even when it is in concealment, even when it feels like a sticky Maya fog. It's all part of the wholeness. So, if we are not honest, the only one we are not being honest with is our very own self, right? The only one that we can hide from is ourself. We can find all kinds of ways of protecting, holding stories, projecting blame. We can move into shame and guilt. We can find these ways of protecting, but in truth, at some point, life will create the situations so that we can keep facing these places, and that we have the possibility at some point of seeing through, deepening, and allowing there to be a depthful releasing of these holding patterns and protections. The true being is always here, perfectly whole, open, free, natural, still, silent being, and resting here in the remembrance, in the natural remembrance of your very own presence that knows itself, here in the glory, here in the radiance of the wide open heart, the one heart. It is to rest here and to feel the knowing and to gaze into your own light, to receive the reflection of your own innocence, your own knowing of yourself, to allow the knowing to resonate like a fine frequency, a vibration, resonating within itself, knowing itself, being the being, simple, silent, free. Peace is here. You are the peace. Openness is here. Simplicity is here. You are the openness. You are the simplicity, the naturalness. And there is, in the knowing, there is a flow that is an alive flow, an alive presence, where the being knows itself, where silence is knowing its own silent depths. Stillness is resonating in the presence of its own stillness. And here the knowing flows, and the knowing flows, and there is an aliveness in the knowing of yourself, just as you have always been, natural, open, and free. And here you are the truth, and here there is honesty, transparency, clarity, clear vision, clear seeing, and into this light of your true nature, where you are one with the divine, where you are one with the glory. Everything can rise to the surface to remember itself as light. That here there is utter safety in the illumination of absolutely everything that has been pushed down, hidden away, labeled as unpalatable. Because here, in the being, in the light of your true essence nature, the knowing of your innocence, the knowing of the purity and simplicity, the knowing of God, divinity is here. And this is what allows anything and everything that seems to be hiding, seems to be divided, to be welcomed, truly welcomed. You are welcome here. You are welcome here. You are welcome here. And so there is a welcoming of the tender voice of the young one that has been so pushed down. And there is a welcoming of all the voices of protection that judge and move in patterns of guilt and shame and projection. There's a welcoming of it all that is so wide open. You are the openness that welcomes. You are the openness that says everything can be here just as it is. Welcome, welcome, welcome. The welcome is that which naturally is just always open, the awareness that is always aware. And from here, there can be this simple awareness of, oh, there is a place that's trying to protect. There is a voice here that is judging. Let it be here. Let it be here. Let it speak its story. Listen, but don't engage. Listen to the story that the mind is telling itself. Witness it, watch it, but don't believe it, right? Don't identify with it. Witness it, watch it, see it, welcome it. Don't let another voice come in that tries to make it right or wrong, or tries to bring in an idea of how to push it away. It is just to illuminate all of the subtleties of this functioning. And in perfect divine timing in the play, we have the possibility of meeting all of these places, bringing it all to the light, because there is no one that is bringing it to the light. It is the light itself that is illuminating it. It's impersonal. It's unlimited in its freedom, and it is eternal in its nowness, right? And in this, there is an intimacy, an honesty with yourself, an ability to gaze into yourself and to meet every fiber of your being and to bring it into the light, the secrets, the hidden places, all of it can come into the light. That is the illuminating principle where there is the remembering of the essence nature as being light. Life is the way. Life is the flow of grace. Life and the way that it so intelligently brings about through the appearance of creation, a reflection of the patterns and holdings in consciousness that are ready to come to freedom. And as they are freed, these places, the whole functioning starts to shift, and there's a natural, deeper abidance in the being. It's natural. Naturally, we're more in the knowing of true nature. There's naturally more openness, more love. There's a natural recognizing of a deeper unity with all that is, with life itself, being life itself. It's natural. As we allow these holding places, protections and defenses to give themselves up, it does not always feel comfortable, that is for sure. It can feel intense, challenging. That is why the myth that the mind has about awakening or enlightenment as I'll get to somewhere where I like myself, I'll get there, and then I'll be all good, like an escape. But it's just not what this is. It's just not what this is. It's like we have to pass through, walk through the waters of the hell realms in order to get to the remembrance of heaven somehow. It's like we have to courageously take the hero's journey, right? We have to enter the wilderness. We have to enter the shadowlands. We have to walk through these places where we don't engage with the mind's story, where we don't move in the patterns of fear, that we walk right through the center of our own patterning, our own sense of limitation, our own protections, our own defenses. We walk right through the center. Our protection is not these strategies It's not judgments. Our protection is the knowing that we are the being, the light, and nothing can touch you. No story that the mind brings forward can touch you. Any story of evil, of entities, any story of something wrong, the perpetrator, right? That where the mind, the victim, brings these stories, it's that we face all of it as the light that knows the whole truth, and we're not disturbed. We don't get taken out, but we allow these places, these fears, we allow the voice to express itself so that we can free these places of fear and story that hold us captive. But we walk right through the center of our sense of limitation. We walk right through the shadowlands. We reveal the secrets, the hidden places. We illuminate it all as the light. We illuminate it all. And in the illumination, it's like opening the closet, you know, under the stairs that you're afraid that there's some kind of boogeyman in. You open it up and you realize that there's nothing really there. We have to be courageous enough to open it up in order to discover there's not really anything there. That it's our stories about what's in there. Stories and attachments to past, memory, that keep us bound in fear, captive in fear. That when we actually open these places up and we let the voices express themselves, but we just witness and illuminate, that we free these stories of ghosts and boogeymen and skeletons, right, that are hiding in there, cobwebs and witches and goblins and goodness knows whatever else, right? We free these stories because we say, I'm afraid that there's something in the cupboard under the stairs. I'm afraid there's something evil. I'm afraid that there's something that's going to get me. But we watch the voice that says that as the light that already knows. We open it up, we open it up, we open up the cupboard, we open it up, we shine the light. Is there anything in there? There's nothing in there. I always knew there was nothing in there. But we took the bridge and we freed these places, right? We free these places. Mm. Mm. The mind is a child that has a lot of stories. A story of past, a story of memories. And it's all held in the nervous system as stress, which is essentially patterns in consciousness. And it's when we free these stresses, we free these patterns, that we just shake free. We just shake it all free, right? We shake it all free. Miraculous things can happen. Holding patterns in the body that can create ill health can start to untangle and fall away. Of course, great emotional healing happens because true healing is the transmutation of the holding patterns into the light. True healing is where these holding patterns are released through revealing that they are nothing more than patterns and strategies and stories of protection. So this is what is in process. This is the beauty of the grace of life, of what life is, that it's here to bring everything to freedom. And we have this incredible possibility in this lifetime to bring everything to freedom and to live in this glorious remembering that we're bringing everything to God. We're giving everything to God. We're finding all of the ways that we hide and protect and keep secrets from ourselves right? We're finding the defenses and we're willing to reveal them. We're willing to see it all in the light of our own wholeness. We're willing to see and be honest, not hold these personas. We're willing to just let it all go, to be completely transparent, to just be the light, to be the love, and to keep shining the possibility of releasing it all. Not being a someone, not being a character, a story, but being the glorious radiance of the heart, which is God. Being the glorious radiance, shining as perfect love. That this is what we are longing for because we remember it, right? It is remembered. The longing is the remembrance that's already present. So when we come to the longing, we can feel that which already knows. And when we come to the presence of being, we can also feel that which already knows. Even when we meet a challenging place, we can say to that place, whatever is holding, what do you really want? And that place will always express that what it wants is to let go. What it wants is love, freedom, to be held, because that place remembers freedom. That is the place within you that has never forgotten. And this is why we're even longing, why we are even carried to be in this unfolding. We're being carried by that which already knows. And that which already knows is that glorious divinity that is longing for itself. So the longing is not a personal longing. The longing is God's longing for God, love's longing for itself, right? So when we open to this sense of the longing, we're really in the oneness. We're really in the fulfillment. And when we open to these tender places that feel bound and hard, when we find out what do they truly want, we discover that they do know. They're in the process of trying to surface. The only reason that there's challenges coming is that these places are trying to surface, but our protections are pushing them down. And the more that we can open and welcome and allow these places, these voices, these holding patterns to come forward, to be witnessed, to be illuminated, truly welcomed, so that they can come into the sense of safety and really discover that what they are longing for, what they really want, is right here. Right? That's when the relaxation happens. I'm longing to be held. I'm longing for love. I'm longing for happiness. And in truly being met, they recognize, oh, it's here. And this is what I am. I've always known this. Right? And there's a shedding of the layers of protection and story and memory and stress and holding, because the remembering of oneness, right? All of these places, they already remember oneness. That's why they are making the mad dash to the light, right? So if we can allow these places that are trying to surface to actually surface, such profundity in the depthful relaxation. And of course, this, as it seems like a process in time, takes as long as it takes, because we've wound up these patterns, and the illumination of them is unwinding them. But the deeper that we are resting as the being, as the light, the radiance of the wide open heart, then there's more spaciousness, more welcome, more honesty, and more of a of a draw for these places to come forward, but also for these places to be truly met. Right? Mm-hmm. So it's not much use when we come to the transcendent knowing of the being, if we just say none of it exists, it's not there, ignore it, just be the being, be the being, be the being. Now, on a certain level, this will work, but it will mean that your life will feel split between being the being and being in normal life and dealing with normal life, and your personality will remain the same and the challenges will remain the same. Of course, it will start to shift in time, but at some point, it is the most incredible grace to be called into this deeper work. And whatever situations it takes to call us in, it is the most incredible grace. It doesn't feel like that to the mind, because the mind wants to just be resting in the transcendent. But if the mind is resting in the transcendent and the heart is not opening, the heart is still protected, then there'll always be this feeling of imbalance. So we have to open the vertical, right? We have to open into the presence of being and the remembrance of being the awake, aware being. But we also have to use the flow of Shakti, the flow of life, to open the sense of the heart, which is really opening all of the protections and defenses and opening to the love and the wild abandon and freedom of what we are when we're not holding all of these tensions and patterns. And so we open, in a way, the vertical and the horizontal planes, and then we start to feel this gyroscopic movement and flow of freedom, where things can really start flowering, right? And what all of this is this great rebalancing, that we have been held in these patterns where there's a dominant, in a way, a dominant energy flow, the great imbalance where the dominant energy flow is like a masculine energy flow. It's not men and women in the way the mind thinks. We all contain these flows. And as we rebalance, as we meet these places, we rebalance and harmonize, releasing the stress from the nervous system. The patterns in consciousness are harmonizing and rebalancing and affecting the whole. And that rebalancing is starting to rebalance the great imbalance within the collective consciousness. The great imbalance in the collective is towards the masculine, which is towards holding, kind of competitive. It's direct, it wants success, it can be very stuck, it wants power, it kind of pushes through, it steamrollers, it just wants to get what it wants. It's pointed, it's very pointed, right? And the rebalancing is bringing about this much more receptive, open, intuitive, natural flow, which is more of this feminine aspect. So we could call this like yang and yin as well. The words don't matter. We can call it the Shiva and the Shakti. It's this rebalancing, right? So if we're just trying to stay within the transcendent, it's very much aligned with the Shiva aspect. And even if this is the true Shiva, the true being, the true awareness, the true light, if we're just resting only in the transcendent, there's an imbalance, right? We're just feeding that imbalance. And that's why in the play of the world, the consciousness has tended towards more of the transcendent, is because it's aligning with the great imbalance in the collective consciousness, which is separation, which plays as a sense of separation. It plays as this kind of energetic, which is kind of like a narcissistic energy, right? It's overbearing, it's pushing, it's powerful, it's trying to exercise its power, it's controlling, it's not receptive, it doesn't listen, it's not like malleable and natural, it's not flowing, it's stuck, it's like holding. And there's a natural rebalancing happening. And that natural rebalancing is happening in the micro and the macro simultaneously, of course, because it's all one. So as we open to these places within our own assignment, let's say, that's not personal at all, it's all happening in consciousness, there's a rebalancing that's happening. Even if we are born into female biology, we're still conditioned deeply into the great imbalance to favor the masculine and to be embroiled in that great imbalance, to want to try to be powerful, to try to be successful, to try to, you know, be equal, and to deny all of these incredibly beautiful qualities, these flowing, more natural yin, Shakti, flowing, open, receptive, intuitive qualities. But so too is that true even if we're born into a male biology, because the male biology in this has been taught to absolutely shut down all of those qualities, that somehow you're a softie or a sissy, or, you know, if you've got those qualities and you've got to power up, be strong, don't cry, you know, be ready for war, you know, it's all of this has been taught. And so, of course, there's this great imbalance that's in the collective and that's playing out. But it's what we're seeing in a world collective view, where this imbalance is starting to implode upon itself in all of the ways of the craziness, right? So we don't need to get involved in all of that in the story. We just have to allow our own hidden places and secrets to surface. This is the powerful way that we affect the great rebalancing that's happening. We rebalance and remember union within our own consciousness. And that remembering of union, that remembering of oneness with God, with the glory, being the light, the love, the openness. And then we hold all of these qualities in balance. So we have one-pointedness, we have power, we have, you know, this steadfastness, we have all the aspects of the masculine, but in balance with the flow and the listening and the intuition and the grace. You know, when there's a balance, then we're completely balanced, we're steadfast, we're rooted, and we're flowing as life, right? So then we've got this openness of knowing the aware being the awareness, but we've also got this wide open heart and this flow of Shakti life, the appearance of creation flowing, and we're one with all of it, and we're opening and opening. And the opening then is gyroscopic. It's opening more in the vertical and horizontal, and every space in the infinite field in between is being recognized to be this awakeness dancing within itself. This is where the flowering is happening. And as we open here to the remembering that it's all the glory, all light, then the resonance, the frequency of where we're living and how we're living and what we are emanating and what we are an embodiment of is starting to resonate and ripple out and reverberate to affect the whole collective, right? So this is what is unfolding. And this is the power, the incredible power of being yourself. And so when we speak about walking right through the center of your stories, like walking through right through the center of the seeming hell realms, that we face it all because you're standing there in a way like the light, the glory, and you're in a way watching the ocean part, right? It's like you're just your steadfastness is this trust in the knowing of the light, the glory, your oneness with God, that you're the light, nothing can touch you. You can invite everything forward. And it's like, instead of battling your way through in psychological functioning, it's like the ocean just parts and you just walk right through as the light, right? You walk right through the center of all of your stories, all of your past memory. You walk right through and it just parts, because the presence of the light is an illuminating presence. And when you're not feeding the stories and you're not dancing over here, scary, scary, oh no, right? You're just the light, everything parts. And the parting is because you're just illuminating it all, right? You're illuminating, so you can just walk right through and you just keep illuminating and illuminating. You know that it's not personal. You know that there's no right or wrong. There's no good or bad. And there can be that seeming play within the appearance, because that is the play of the collective consciousness right now. But if you don't feed into that and you start pulling your entangled tendrils out of the collective consciousness and stay steadfast in the knowing of the being while staying open to the flow of life and transmutation, then it's like freeing yourself from the collective consciousness, being able to witness it, see it, and compassionately continue to transmute it, but not being bought into the stories of fear and evil and wrong, and a fear that you could be diminished or dissolved, that you know that you're not the body, so it doesn't even matter what happens, that you are this presence of light, the eternal life, and you cannot be touched by anything that happens on the surface of life. And you use this protection. The true protection is to know your oneness with the light, right? And of course, in this process, we actually just come to see through the whole story. We come to see from a completely different perspective that what we have seen as evil and bad is just all the glory. It's all the glory. We can only see the essence of everything, that we're not identifying with the story. We're just resonating in the essence. So then we're not so taken out and capsized by the stories. We just keep resting in the true light, the true radiance. And here we have this power, incredible power, to transmute anything that arises on behalf of the whole. We have this incredible power to just keep transmuting, 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 because we're in service, right? And there's a natural wisdom that is carrying its whole unfolding. So this is what is happening. It's incredibly beautiful, miraculous, magnificent, radiant. And the felt sense in the human experience is that it's challenging, it's depthful, it's intense, powerful, profound, to be completely consumed, to consume yourself into the light, right? To completely like devour yourself into the light of your true nature. To recognize that you're not the story, you're not the protections, you're not the defenses, you're not the mind. None of that is who you are in truth, and that you can face it all and see through it all and come to this freedom. Great glory. So just to be the being, it sounds so simple, too simple, but to be the being and to keep receiving and receiving, being the being that is opening to this receptive, right? The the classic bypassing that happens is that imbalance of Shiva. It's the imbalanced masculine, right? Bypass it. Don't go there. Don't get weak. Don't believe in the story. Don't open those places. Stay in the transcendent. Stay in the transcendent. Stay in the transcendent, right? But Shiva and Shakti are one in union. We have to find the remembering of this union of Shiva and Shakti in our own heart to remember God, right? We have to find this rebalanced remembering in our own heart that is open, undivided, knows itself as the awake field of light, the transcendent, and yet is so open and unprotected that it knows itself also as love and is wild and free, honest and illuminated in the presence of its own love. Right? Mm. 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 Resting here, the silence, the stillness, the undiminished light and peace of the true being, the true heart. That we can nurture the sense of heart. The sense of personal heart is that guarded heart that is just wanting to bust open and remember its infinite nature. Of course, the true heart has never been closed. Never been closed. It always knows its true nature. The sense of closed heart or protected heart is the armoring, the guarding and protections that have been learned. But in the deepest depth of the heart, you know, that voice, the voice of the child is the voice of the true heart. And that's why we don't want to silence it. We want to allow that voice, the voice of the heart, the innocence, the fear, right? We want for that voice to not be made wrong, because when that voice can be expressed and truly received, what it reveals is its essence knowing of itself, right? So this place that we say, what does this place that's holding truly want? And it says, I want freedom, I want love. I want to remember my oneness with God. It can only speak this because it already knows. So when it speaks what's obscuring, this that it already knows, flowers, right? This is the beauty. This is the beauty of the flowering and the importance of bringing these deeply held places forward is that they are the voice of the true heart. They are the knowing of God and the glory, happiness, love that is already within us. They're just being obscured by misunderstandings. So when we can allow the misunderstandings to be expressed and bridged through acknowledgement without engaging and making more story, we can allow the secrets, the hidden places to come into the light. And the illumination reveals that there's only ever been light, and these places have only ever really known the truth, and that the light that has always been known has never ever been dimmed, right? It's like this layer of Maya, this layer of obscuration that we just have to shine enough light to see that the concealment in true nature is the grace. Mm.